Hey everyone! Version 0.4.18 of OpenRCT2 has been released, and the developers have called it Unladen Swallow.
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
Alright, in this video we will go over the most exciting changes that this release brings us. Alright, the stand-up roller coaster has gotten new track elements. So you can now by default also build a medium half loop or a large half loop or a large corkscrew on it. It has also gotten these wide sloped turns. You can also do smooth transitions from horizontal to steep, and it has even gotten this weird track piece where you go from banked to unbanked on a slope. You don't often see these being used, but it can be useful sometimes. Now, and there's several more track pieces that the ride has gotten. And normally you will not see them if you just have stand-up coaster trains, but if you enable the cheat to enable all drawable track pieces, you can also use these track pieces that you see here. So among them we have the 0G roll, the large 0G roll, vertical track, and even these steep turns. The classic stand-up roller coaster also has received most of these track pieces, but it's missing a few of the banked ones. Alright, here's another little change. The LSM launch coaster now also has diagonal brakes and also block brakes. Now, something which you can do in the ride window is to let the game plot a graph for you, for example of the velocity or the altitude or the g-forces. Now that's nothing new, but with something which is now new is that you can actually make this window much wider if you want. Now I have this graph which extends all the way to the full width of my window. And if you really want to plot the entire ride in one graph, well, if you have a really wide window, or if we just change the scaling, you can see we can make this graph really wide if we want. Alright, next up is another nice little change to the user interface. If you're looking in your save files, or if you're looking in your files through OpenRCT2, all the folders now have this little folder icon in front of them. Now there's been another little change to the save window. Previously, if you wanted to save your game under a new file name, you would have to click new file here and then type your file name. But now there's this field here already where you can simply type your file name, then press save, and that can be used to save your game under a new file name. So this button that's over here will probably become obsolete in the future. Alright, for this next change I have unlinked my Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 installation. Now, for the people who don't know, if you have Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 installed on your computer, you can link to the installation and it will give you access to the old scenarios or some things like the ground textures or wall textures that Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 provides. Now I've now unlinked it, so I don't have access to these features anymore. Now one thing that Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 also provided if it was linked was opaque water. So here in the list you can find transparent water. Transparent water is now on, but as you can see, even with Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 not linked, I can now still have opaque water in the park. So that's something which has been added in this release. Now another thing that was different was that if Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 was linked, it would give you these sprites for the boosters. If Rollercoaster Tycoon wasn't linked, it would just use the brake sprites for the boosters for the corkscrew coaster. But as you can see, even though Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 isn't linked, we still now get these nicer booster sprites. Now in OpenRCT2 we have players from all over the world, and the game has also been translated in several languages. So if you go in options and then here under the stopwatch icon, here you can select the language in which you want to play the game. Now one language in particular was quite a bit behind, which was Russian, which you can find over here, and a few thousand more strings have been translated into Russian or updated. Alright, for this next change we'll go into the object selection, and if we then go to the park entrance tiles, you can see that we can now select up to a maximum of 255 different park entrance styles. And this limit was increased from previous 4. Now, and then if we make sure that sandbox mode is enabled, and we go here to the map window, we can then place all these different park entrances if we want. And there's also a little scroll bar over here, so we can select all of them. And we can just keep placing them if we want. And that's definitely more than enough for any park. Alright, next up, there was a bug with the Giga Coaster, which in very specific circumstances could cause a train to spawn on top of the cable lift hill. So if you build a cable lift hill, in some situations you need a pretty specific setup for this. A train could spawn on top of the lift hill, and the cable, the catch car would still be waiting at the bottom, and then the train would simply fall down and crash. But in OpenRCT2, the trains can now no longer spawn on a cable lift hill, which should fix this issue. Alright, the next one is one that really annoyed me, and that's that guest screams would sometimes loop on long drops, especially for the high-pitched scream that you sometimes hear. It got really annoying up to the point where I would use low-pass audio filters in my videos to just drown out that scream. But yeah, that has been fixed, and sound like screams will now only happen once on a drop, like they are supposed to. Okay, next up, there were some issues with random tree placement. In the picture below here, you can see how the trees were placed if you did a random tree placement in a scenario. But as you may be able to see, there's definitely a pattern in here, and it doesn't really look random anymore. And that has been fixed in this release. So now it should look more like the picture above again. Okay, next up, people who were using the software renderer. You can select which renderer you want to use in the options. They could notice some artifacts as guests were walking by with balloons or while wearing hats. Now, yeah, this was only an issue in software renderer, but now it has also been fixed, so balloons and hats should display properly again. Okay, next up, there was an issue where if the game was paused and you would spawn a vehicle, the vehicle would actually be invisible until you unpause the game. But as you can see, I can now make the vehicle appear and disappear at will while the game is paused. Okay, for the next item, something which you can do in Rollercoaster Tycoon and OpenRCT2 as well is change your color palette. So by default you can see several watercolors here. Now I chose green water, and if you then choose a ride that has water here in the preview image, you can see the watercolor also changes. Now there were actually several rides from the expansions, for example the hover cars. And yeah, for several of these vehicles the watercolor would not change if the water palette was changed. But these images have now also been fixed. I believe it was for the hover cars, the river Styx ride, or Styx, I don't think someone told me recently that I pronounced it incorrectly. And there's also the Neptune ride and the Harpies ride. And all of these rides should now display the proper watercolor. Alright, those were some of the most exciting changes that were done in this new release version. I will leave a link to the full changelog in the video description, so you can go through it on your own. Now, if you enjoyed this video, or if it was useful for you, please give it a like, it would really help out my channel. And I would love to hear in the comment which one of these changes you think is the most exciting. And if you want to see more videos like these, you can always subscribe to my channel. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again in the next one. See you later.